meeting at 11.
That's kind.
Preschoolers today.
How are you, Shannon?
Good. I had a meeting camp last year. So I teach preschool in the morning, so today I got to leave my preschoolers early.
Do you have any fun plans?
They haven't gone, I
They
was
were
thinking,
panicking.
since the preschoolers on their birthday.
My youngest child, my 6-year child, that Tim was talking to. Two that have graduated from the Y, two that are at the Y, and one is a freshman at the U. Well, that was a little bit of a family trauma. And that's like going to the Yankees. Like, that is a big time to trail in our house. But it turns out it's an excellent school.
Oh, wow.
She's really having a great experience.
But we were all like, what? Inside.
We're
doing a lot of camping.
Seriously.
I mean, we used to like stick
BYU stickers on our like uncle's car that was a youth graduate.
So I was like, I mean, that's like run never been.
Your family is deep blue like ours.
We are true blue.
Where's he going?
Our oldest son.
In your house? Does it like
Okay, everybody,
you don't know when he started?
Yeah.
Okay. That's exciting.
Welcome to everybody here who's in attendance and to those who are watching online today. We are convened today as the Provo City School District Board of Education along with members of the City Council and City staff, and we're grateful for everyone's attendance, so thank you. We are meeting today, I apologize, today is Thursday, April 27th, 2023. It's 12:03 p.m. We're meeting at 280 West 940 North in Provo, Utah. We're going to start today with a roll call, and Rebecca Nielsen, the Board of Education President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Vice President.
Justin Harrison, City Council.
Shannon Ellsworth, Provo City Council.
Melanie Hall, Board Member of the Provo School District. Lisa Boyce, School Board Member.
Bill Fillmore, Provo City Council.
Terry McCabe, Board Member. Gina Hales, Provo School Board.
Derek Anderson, Provo's Business Administrator.
Rachel Lidwell, Provo City Council Vice Chair. Meg Van Wagner, Provo City School Board.
Okay, great. Thank you everybody for making it today, and I don't have on here that we need a motion to convene. Do we need to? Probably should have a motion to convene, right?
There was a name tag.
We'll go ahead and take a motion to convene just in case. So is there a motion?
I move that we convene a joint meeting of the Provo City Council and the Provo City School District Board of Education.
Perfect. Motion made by Board Member Boyce. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Board Member Hall. We are now in our study session. Dave Shipley just arrived. Thanks for joining us, Dave. And we will start with item number 3 on our agenda, which is an update on the hoax active shooter incident that happened at Provo High recently. We've invited Jason Garrison to come give an update on that. And Jason?
Would you like me to go?
Wherever you feel comfortable.
See you later, Dave.
Melanie,
You opened that one up. Yep.
no, thanks for this opportunity. Hopefully this is a good place. I apologize for those that I'm speaking behind. I don't know if this is the most ideal place.
I don't know where you're, it's a round
Yeah, I
robin,
guess I'm
so
gonna
it
get
doesn't
talked
matter
to
where
from
you
behind.
sit.
Behind John, but
All right, behind you.
Yeah, there we go.
Don't take
Perfect.
offense.
We're good.
I'm just going to read, just give a,
The YouTube camera is kind of...
Oh,
This
you
way.
need to come
So
up
maybe over
here.
here.
Sorry.
All
Thank
that
you.
wherever you want, that was just
I know,
a lie.
that was just setting me up.
We're kidding. That was a
Don't be
lie.
shy directing everyone from
Thank
here
you,
on out.
Bonnie.
No, but thank you, Bonnie. Appreciate you, as always. So it's one of those uncomfortable, unfortunate compliments that we're getting better at some of these things. The reality is we are. We're becoming better prepared, better response, and of course our recovery to dealing with the aftermath of some of these situations, even if it's some additional social work, some additional parent services for their kids or for themselves or for staff. So it's always a good thing that we learn from these things. With that, I decided to experiment this year with what's called an after-action report. Many of you are very familiar with that. And there's an incident that takes place, and the after-action report is exactly that. What the district and our partners, what actually occurred, and then what we did as a district, as first responders, and then we collaborate and debrief to complete the after-action report, because we're always trying to get better, trying to learn, and continue to grow, right? So just to give you a quick summary of what occurred, most of you are very familiar on a general surface level, but just maybe some more specifics that might appease the crowd. On that Wednesday, March 29th, about 9:45, dispatch, our Provo PD dispatch was called, saying that there was a active shooter in the bathroom on our campus. Now, that immediately went out to Provo PD. Coincidentally, me and a couple of my team members were at Provo PD's police station getting ready to meet with a emergency notification alert vendor. The same vendor Spanish Fork had utilized, who had been trained and been given a week prior. So we actually had that meeting set up, and then this incident popped up, and we obviously all had to run and respond. Our SRO that's assigned to Provo High was with me at the Provo PD, and he immediately notified the school, so he was getting it firsthand through the dispatch. At the same time, there was a little bit of reserve, not in our response, but just in thinking, because there had been other similar calls to other dispatches across the state, and then what we later found out was across the country, right? The most startling, maybe, it was the one at Spanish Fork and at Ogden, I believe, where they actually indicated there were dead students laying on the ground. So there was initial heavy response there. We were third or fourth in line on the next call. We still had over 40 officers or first responders show up. We had our Provo PD, we had Provo Fire, we had Utah County Sheriff, we had Highway Patrol, and we had Orem, all representing there, the majority coming from Provo City PD. And they all came. The call came at 9:54. First responder, the first car that landed in our parking lot was 4 minutes later from the call. And then shortly, minute or two after that, we had 9 officers coming in through the front door, 4 coming in through the back. So within 5, 6, 7 minutes roughly, we had a tactical team of about 13, 14 officers already there on site and trying to, one, gather as much information as they can as they're dealing with, is this a possible hoax, is this a swatting situation, and realizing that it is happening at other dispatches or other cities, other schools. They still wanted to respond, appropriately. And so they gathered some information, at the same time listening to the dispatch as to what was going on. Fire department was notified as well, or they were part of the call. That was super helpful. Very helpful to have them blocking off the streets and staging areas to where additional congestion and cars other than first responders were allowed to get through. We already have enough people we have to worry about on the campus, having to bring in or having to deal with other people coming onto the campus or getting near the campus, just putting more people in jeopardy of harm, or more work first responders have to do in protecting and in providing those services, right? So it's real nice to have those fire department as part of that team, I guess, of response. Very helpful. We didn't have that in the first one, or the one we had last year. And so it got real congested real fast, and it got real difficult to maneuver just inside the parking lots, let alone inside the building. They had district, so our SRO, who was first in line on the dispatch, notified the school administration. Administration, in coordination with the police department, said we need to go into a lockdown. We're coming in full SWAT gear. We're treating this like a real lockdown. We need to go into lockdown. So the school was announced to a lockdown, and then district administration was notified by the school administration, where we then immediately, obviously, stopped what we were doing and provided that, hoping to provide that additional support that the school needed. Interesting enough, even though we're supposed to be part of the incident command center, there's still a little bit of staging that we have to do, because again, they don't want to bring more people into a dangerous situation. So we were even held up at the fire department's staged area, the roundabout on one side and the entry to the student parking lot on the other. So we were staged. They were waiting for about 3-4 minutes. In that time, we were able to notify Lakeview Elementary. Police had and fire indicated that they weren't in danger of or in need of a lockdown, but we still put them on what's called a secure protocol, which means they go and lock all their outdoor perimeter doors and locks, but business as usual inside the building. They don't need to locks, lights out of sight. There's no run, hide, fight. The business is normal. Let's just lock all the doors so people on the outside can't get in. So we were able to do that. Full transparency, the one group that we neglected to call in a timely fashion was seminary. We remembered them eventually, but that's 250 kids that if they don't know what's going on, they're going to start working their way across the street onto campus and again put them. So that's one of those growth areas that we're going to assign someone to notify seminary as one of the primary need to know individuals. They do all the drills with us. When we do our monthly drills, they do all the drills with us. But in this case, they were not remembered in a timely fashion that I feel, as well as many others should have. And so we're going to work better to get better at that. The Incident Command Center was established. Normally, it's established outdoors, right, away from the building. When police came, they were gathering all their information, and they felt it was okay to establish the Incident Command Center inside the main office, that's where we all were met up and started to create the Caleb and his team, communications is always one of our, hopefully from this point on will be one of our first contacts, because getting that messaging out, it's never going to be fast enough. We're never going to outdo social media with kids in the classroom or teachers or whatever, because we got to make sure we send out the right information. We don't want to send out misinformation, or that's really going to cause an issue, right? Is there a possibility of maybe sending something out initially that says families, situations occurring at Provo High, police are investigating, stay tuned, right? Maybe there's a way to do that earlier on, but at the same time, until we get to the school and find out all the information, we're not going to know what to send out. And again, we were staged for 5 minutes, roughly 5 minutes before, right? So things were already going on. Things are already being sent out on social media. We're staged trying to get district notified, trying to get our board notified, trying to get Caleb obviously notified, and the surrounding school notified, right? Those are primary need to knows, right? With all due respect, the want to knows are a little lower on the totem pole, right? So communication started to get sent out through e-admins. Once we started to get more information, Caleb drafted a letter and had it done in Spanish for the parent links to go out to let them know what was going on. And again, I wrote down the times and stuff that these were done. Let's see. 40 first responders showed up, 40 that I counted. I went back to watch the video because I just wanted to see where we can get better and where our deficiencies are. And it's one thing to have a conversation with somebody that was in it. It's another thing to actually watch the video. Not to say that to discredit the conversation, but the video also shows some intensity. It shows the mannerisms. It shows how many people were there. It shows the 4 teams going together from door to door. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt your sentence.
No, please.
I'm just curious if after you have or you will debrief with the district and the Provo Police Department?
We have.
Together? Yeah,
I already met with their leadership last week. Their captain, their sergeant, and the lead SRO, or the SRO that was assigned to Provo High. So we've already met, and I reviewed my after-action report with them. They do one as well. It speaks a little bit more to the law enforcement things, but we've combined these. So these are all a joint effort.
Great.
And again, there was 2 or 3 more e-admins sent out, another parent link sent out. Then we sent out because we understand that word travels, and we want to make sure it's accurate word that travels. Other schools are getting called as to what's going on in their schools. Caleb created a message for all principals, almost as a company line in a sense. This is the same shared, consistent message for all schools when they get calls from their stakeholders and whatnot. Police went, the first responders, it took about 17 minutes to clear the entire building. They didn't, because of the information they received and because they determined or deemed that it was a swatting incident or a hoax, they still made the effort to check every classroom's door, make sure it was locked. And they were all locked. So they were very complimentary of that. That's something, that's a culture thing that we've been really pushing. Executive council, I'm looking at, Superintendent Cox and all the other council members, and Derek, sorry, and they can approve hundreds of thousands of dollars, right, of infrastructure and secure vestibules, but all it takes is one teacher to leave a door unlocked or propped open, right? So it's that human element is our greatest detriment, right? So the training, culture, that's the part that we're really focusing on now, because as Board Member Hall knows, being on the safety committee and Board Member McCabe, we have a lot of investment of hardware, infrastructure, secure mechanisms into the school, and we're continuing to add those. But it's the training and the culture. So it was really good to hear that all the doors that the officers tried were locked. And they were done within about 17 minutes. All 40 of them had gotten through the building in about 17 minutes. Then they debriefed. Yes, sir.
So on the debrief from Ogden and Spanish Fork, one of the comments was if they had current keys, they didn't have enough. And if they had, and if they weren't current, if for some reason they just had outdated keys or things
Yes.
like that. Was that a lesson for us, or did we have enough and current keys?
That is growth area number A.
Jumped ahead.
Letter A for us. Not enough master keys for first responders. So thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And we do. And here's the situation. We had 5 sets of master keys in the officer's office safe. But he's with me at the Provo City building. Right? So he had to give someone the code to get in, and you know what I mean? So we're gonna make sure that each of the schools has some sort of key control somewhere else to access other than having to wait for the officer, which will increase the number of master keys. So great question. And
when you were talking about the 17 minutes, was that delayed, being able to go classroom by classroom, was that delayed by the fact that we just didn't have enough officers with keys that could be going classroom to classroom, or was it going to take 17 minutes either way?
Right. So the keys never came into, another great question. The keys never were needed. They were given out to their 4 teams. They had 4 teams of 4. Then they had others that were managing the incident command center, a couple others outside helping out with traffic, crowd control. Because we still had kids coming back from it was prior to lunch. The earlier period, they were coming, parents were coming, so we had a couple there. The keys weren't utilized because we didn't have to evacuate. In this case, all they did was they checked for
Check
locks.
if they're locked. They weren't checking if the keys actually worked.
They did
weren't
not.
Clearing rooms.
They did not
room
check
by
the
room.
keys.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
Great question and great feedback there too. Because it was all cleared, so understand that when an incident like this happens, the first law enforcement, they become the incident command center leaders, right? We, as a school district, school employees, we're supposed to follow lockdown protocols as well. Our safety as well is paramount, right? So we rely on the first responders, in this case Provo PD, to manage or at least lead the incident command center with district council, district administrator input as well as schools input. They're the ones that determine if it's an all clear or not. We don't call an all clear. We'll make the all clear on the PA system, but they're the ones telling us it's okay to make the all clear. So then Principal Seitz was able to meet with his office staff, real short time, because they were locked up in different offices, kind of give them a quick 2-minute update as to what's next, because it was about 7 minutes prior to the first lunch period. So that would have thrown another wrinkle into things, as you can imagine, right? And so that was, that announcement took place, and then with about 5 minutes to go, I had asked for additional officers just to stick around for supervision, kind of spread out, be visible, but don't be in the way and don't scare, as well as additional district administrators, just kind of just stick around because we understand that when this happens, kids are going to want to check out and go home, parents are going to want to come out and get their kids. So there was going to be an extra flow of congestion and traffic of coming and going that we needed more eyes on it. I wanted the principal and the teachers and his staff to focus on his kids. We'll focus on the community aspect, even those parents, but also reassuring the parents and the kids that, you know, we've done and we're going to continue to do everything we possibly can do to ensure their safety. And some of them just went home just because they needed that time out. And some parents, once they heard the situation, decided to keep their kids in school because their kid wanted to stay in school. So we didn't have very many people that that chose to leave, believe it or not. So then after that, we met with Provo High administration to kind of get their feedback as a district and us met to kind of talk about things that went well and things we can do to get better. I'm very critical of myself, so you can see and this is probably an insult to all the amazing things that went well, but that's our list of things that went well. There's other things that we can do to get better. But some of it's small, just having extra keys, right? Another suggestion was when you have these multiple level schools, you know, it's nice to have a map, maybe a laminated map or something like that. So that's something we'll look at, right? So there's little things like that that for the operational we can work on. All right, there's my long, short summary.
Thank you so much, Jason. Any questions from anyone?
Sorry. My feedback from the Ogden Spanish Fork recap was keys and buckets. And buckets are in my mind because one of the districts had done a great job putting buckets in a private area if you're in lockdown for students in a classroom to be able to use the restroom if they need to.
Yeah.
It just made me think,
Right.
Is that something as a district that we need to look at?
So the majority of our schools and classrooms have what's called to-go bags, which is a backpack
Right.
with first aid kits, not a bucket.
Not a bucket. Okay.
I'm coming from Los Angeles where I've been in 2 active shootings and multiple earthquakes at the schools I've been in, and buckets are probably the #1 thing that's needed,
Okay.
more than a first aid kit. So that's something that we should definitely look at.
Yeah, I was going to say, a couple of years ago, PTSA at Timpview High School, a couple of students led an initiative, and they had a bucket with emergency supplies, and
Right.
that delivered into every classroom, but those have to be updated, and
Right.
classroom numbers shift and change, but it's such a great idea.
Yeah. No, it is. It's something that's we continue to think about, but how do we get it done when, yeah, you know. Yes, ma'am.
Do we feel comfortable with the teacher response to the lockdown? People in my neighborhood were telling me that maybe there was teachers struggled with it, but I haven't asked.
So answer this in 2 different, an A and a B. A is all the teachers were prepared to lock the doors and move the kids.
Okay.
So that's a great starting point.
Okay.
The feedback that the high school got was, and it's just a continuing thing, are there additional resources and supports for teachers and staff after
Okay.
this? We're real quick to get the kid into social emotional a day or 2 or weeks after. Are we checking in and making the same efforts with now the invitation's always there for teachers and staff.
Right.
But are we actually making that extra step into their classroom and checking? So that's something that we're going to focus on. The other is the emergency alert system that we're looking at. We're looking at a couple different vendors that's instantaneous live communication with the teachers.
So we'll get to all the teachers.
All at the same time, all at once, and it's live.
Okay.
It's an app, it's push button, safe, unsafe, it can be a chat, you know, they're down in my building or whatever. Plus, all the maps of each school will be digitized to where police are now able to mark off where they've been and where they're not and so forth. So that's one it's the one Spanish Fork was piloting the day it happened.
Okay.
And the people we were meeting with that morning until we got interrupted.
So the teachers did a good job with what they had, and then we just need to make sure we're attending to their mental health, not just
That was
mental health.
their feedback to the school administration.
Okay.
So
Thank
yeah,
you.
and I know you'd be concerned about that. Any other questions? Please.
We're all glad, of course, that this was a hoax, right?
Yeah.
But it seems to me like hoaxes are all too easy to create. So, I mean, we're just inherently vulnerable to such a hoax.
Yeah.
And in fact, given the climate in America, we may see an increase in that.
Sure.
So, what did you learn in terms of how to discern between the real deal and a hoax?
Right. So we're going to rely on the first responders to determine that. We're going to respond as a district, as a crisis team, the normal way we would
You
respond.
have no choice to respond.
We don't have any choice. Now, first responders can determine if it's an evacuation lockdown or a check the door lockdown, right? Based on what they were hearing on, I keep like this is a phone, on what they're hearing on their disc, right? What they're hearing on there was that they were starting to get it across multiple schools or districts across the state, and then within the first 15, 20 minutes, Pennsylvania had 12 schools get the same message. It was Oakland, Seattle, all these other across the country, right? And so they started to pull back. Our first responders deemed it, maybe it's not a full evacuation, but we still are going to walk through the process, send building teams as a training, and check the doors. So they're still going to do it regardless, check.
So what's the consensus as to the origins of this national coordinated hoax phenomenon?
Sure. So based on what we know, it was out of country. But this is what you're asking. It came, the IP or the information, I don't speak techno. Where's Kincaid? Yeah, where's Kincaid? The IP and the information, whatever it was coming from out of country. It was a foreign accented mail with the same messaging, except some schools got that there were bodies on the ground and some got that there was just a shooter in the building. So it was a little inconsistent with that, but when the first responders arrived, collaborated, getting the swatting information or the hoax information, they still are expected to follow through with the protocols of checking doors, checking buildings, checking bathrooms.
Right.
And that's why it happened in a short period of time. Evacuation would have caused us 3 or 4 hours of relocating the students.
I guess I'm asking, is there any technological possibility of discerning that this is a foreign actor, that these hoax calls came from a foreign source, which would be the first red flag that it's a hoax?
That one I didn't get that information until a few hours after. So that's a great question. I don't know how soon that can be discerned, but we're going to respond as if it's the real deal, and then have to pull back, obviously, resources as appropriate.
Okay, thank you so much, Jason. We appreciate it.
All righty.
Okay, we have a tight agenda and we have a tight timeline, so I'm going to go ahead and address item number 4 as quickly as possible, which is an update regarding the superintendent search. So since the last time we met, pretty much everything has happened. We've done quite a few things. I'm going to give you a quick update on the things that have happened and where we're at. We opened up applications on February 27th and closed that on March 27th. We received a great pool of candidates. We had 33 members of our community come in and review and score those applications. After that, board members reviewed and scored and screened applications as well, and then we did a lot of deliberations and narrowed things down a little bit. We conducted our first round of interviews. We also narrowed things down a little further, and then we have completed what we call our site visits, where we have gone out to their places of employment and talked to them in their element and with people that they currently work with. And then where we're at now is we are finishing up our deliberations and finalizing some details, and we should have an announcement really soon. So our goal has always been May 1st. We're still on track for May 1st. We're hoping to be able to do that. There may be some, I don't know, a few days plus or minus either direction, but that's still our target, and we're still on target. So there's not a lot I can say about it because of confidentiality issues, but we're moving along in the process. I'll speak for myself, and the board members can nod along if they agree, but I'm super excited and optimistic about the future of our district, and we're in a really great place, and it'll be a really great turnout. So just for fun, I wanted to tell you that at the last board meeting I reported on a quick rough estimation of how many hours have been spent on the search. As of 2 Tuesdays ago, that was 1,416 hours spent on the search. And the point of me telling you that is I just want to highlight one part of that, which is that, now I can't find the figure, but I believe it was like 52 or 56% of the hours actually belong to community members. which we are super happy about because we really wanted to make sure the community was involved. We used the results from the survey to help craft our interview questions and our application questions. And the community has actually put in the most amount of hours on this search so far. So we're super grateful for everyone who has participated in that, and we're just moving along. So any quick questions there? And if I can answer them, I will. Okay, sounds good. So just kind of watch for that, and that should be coming soon. Item number 5 on our agenda is an update on construction projects, and we'll give the time to Derek Anderson, our business administrator, to give us a quick update there.
Awesome. Let me see here. Okay, so we do have the other one on there, so I'll love that on there. With the construction projects, Tip U is moving along nicely. We're still scheduled to open for this next school year. Everything is still on schedule to be open for the start of the school year at that school. Shoreline is moving along amazingly. That school is also on target right now. We haven't really had any big delays. Wasatch is moving along, not as great of a pace. You know, if you were to go and look at Shoreline and Wasatch and look at the difference, and drive by, that's kind of what the difference is Shoreline was a flat site and we was able to just get going right out the gate, and that's why you see a lot of walls up and a lot of you know, electrical and plumbing and you know, everything going on. Whereas Wasatch, we've been dealing with, you know, a site that is difficult, and that with the weather that's been happening, it's made, and the retaining walls that we're putting in, it's made it difficult to get that project to continue to move along. We've had some delays on the concrete wall pieces that get put into place. There's some delays on the block also on the wall. So this project now is, I would say, at risk of possibly being delayed. I haven't been given the definitive yet that it is delayed, but there's a chance that that one could hit the delay, and we'll have to figure out a contingency on that one.
When was it supposed to open?
Next fall.
I want to
Not this coming fall, so a year and a half.
24, 25.
I want to know how much you spent on retaining walls. It's truly incredible.
It's a lot.
A lot.
Walls of Jericho.
I believe there was a question from the city council about filling in the different levels of the retaining walls and whatnot. I can't remember who that came from officially, but do you want to address that there?
So the way the retaining walls work is, so there are, on the front end, there's 2 levels to bring it up to grade level, and on the back end, there's 3 levels to bring it down to grade level. And so each of them are about 15 feet by themselves, and so it tells you the front wall is going to be about 30 feet, and the back wall is going to be about 45 to 50 feet. There is a terrace, and what we'll have to do is we'll be end up having to put essentially gates along the top and along the sides to try to prevent everybody just going and climbing. Now, doesn't mean it's going to be preventable, but we will put in the required safety measures that we're required to do.
Derek, will you just speak to, though, I do think that there, with this question, some confusion as to that front wall, where I think we talked about this yesterday, right?
Okay.
As opposed to digging down, I think there was some idea, some thought that maybe
Oh,
that part
yes.
would be flush with the street,
Can I
right?
write on that to give a visual?
So that might be one of the questions.
That might be even easier. So the reason why the front end came up instead of the back continuing to come down, this is going to be a cross-sectional view, okay? So this is at the property on the west side on the street, looking at the property, okay? And it's kind of sloped like this, that property, okay? To build up, right, if we build up, we only have to fill in, essentially, this piece. But if we wanted to bring it down to street level, then we've got to excavate all of this to bring it farther in line. And so that because excavation is a huge driver in this cost, it was much cheaper to bring up and fill in this and then bring this down and create that flat space. So that's the reason why there's a retaining wall on the front and then bringing it down on the back. So it was just, it's by far the cheapest way to get that site to prep to where it needs to be built. So, does that answer the question? Yep, no, all right. Okay.
Okay, does anybody have any questions for Derek on our construction projects?
On is there any future plan to replace the rest of it or not?
Not currently. We don't have any official plans currently. It's in our scope and we know it needs to be done.
Is it on your CPI yet or not?
I missed the first part of the question.
If the second half of Timview is already planned for.
No, yeah, it has not been planned. The original estimate was, I believe, the 26 years when we originally had the estimate of phase 2. For FY 26, yeah.
Oh.
FY 26, yeah.
2026. So there's nothing official.
That's under CIP.
Okay. Any further questions? Great. Okay, moving along. And also related is we are going to have a discussion now about active transportation for Timview, Wasatch, and Shoreline. This was requested by board member Van Wagenen, so I was going to let her take the lead on this.
Yes,
go ahead, Meg.
I have some handouts. I'm going to pass around if we want to kind of share. Safe routes, some maps. I'll be quick because of our time.
Take all the time you need.
Okay, so yeah, this has been on my mind as we've been thinking about. I'm going to focus on the new sites, but I do think we could always think about all of our school sites, right? But I think the new school sites really provide an opportunity to be thoughtful about how we can influence traffic versus being influenced by the traffic to these new sites. And we can include Timview as well because it's under construction. I will say, like I think approaching this, last night we were fortunate enough to go to the Outstanding Educator event, and I've been thinking about that and all the educators that were highlighted, and something that stood out to me for them, they all were able to really look at their students as these whole humans, and all the students who spoke to the efforts of their teachers and their paraeducators just spoke to how they felt seen by these teachers, and they knew about their lives. So I do think that when we're thinking about getting kids safely to school and what some of the pros are, we kind of were looking at our students as their whole being, right? And what some of the benefits can be. So kind of, and these are things we probably all know, but I think it's helpful for us to keep them in mind as we're thinking about these new school sites that will impact the city as a whole as well, right? In a couple meetings ago, it was said that we are a walking school district. We have low transportation costs. So I've been thinking about that, kind of this idea, are we walking versus just a limited busing? Because if we're a walking school district, I think we have room for improvement to really encourage that at our schools, right? If that's kind of what we're championing, we have our 13 neighborhood elementary schools, right? Neighborhood schools. So how are we making it not only saying that we're walking school, but that it's encouraged in a way that kids and families feel safe sending their kids to school, walking, biking, scooting, whatever it might be. So these bullet points are mainly for me so that I could stay on track. And I think especially around the schools, improving street design to slow traffic around our schools is very important. And I know sometimes this kind of gets pitted well, if we do this, then it's going to be a downside for cars. And I think we can kind of start to, I think these ideas can benefit everybody, because if we have more people walking and biking, we have less cars on the road around pickup and drop-off times, right? And so I think there's elements that we can approach this to be mindful that it can really improve things for all of us. So one of these handouts is Safe Routes to School, and we obviously this is done in our school community councils, but it's relevant. I think Safe Routes to Schools have health and safety benefits for our students that also then extend to our community as a whole. There's studies that show, kids who walk to school, it gets their minds going, and they actually have better attention ability in school. So all these kind of actual health benefits to encouraging this in our schools. air quality, idling cars. I know the health department, Utah County Health Department has done some campaign efforts to help with this, but idling cars when kids are coming out of schools does have a negative impact on their health and asthma. And yeah, I'm speaking to this as a pediatric nurse, right? And so these are things that are top of mind. And we already talked about the academic performance, and I think we'll probably already do this. I know some of this I'm new, right? So some of you may be like, we're doing this. I don't know. But it's a continued opportunity for the school district and the city to work together on this, because I think that's like one of our strengths, right? Our school district is our city boundaries, right? So we can really continue to work together on this. Okay, next slide. Any questions so far? Okay, so I'm just going to, so obviously Wasatch I am aware of because it is the district that I represent, so I've been attending their community council meetings and their safety committees and trying just to kind of be aware of the concerns for that area. Gordon Haight has been so fantastic coming to our community council meetings at all of the schools and so very helpful. So thank you so much.
Gordon goes above and beyond.
Yeah, yes, the Wasatch Community Council meeting was very helpful and informative, so thank you. So we know 820 North at Wasatch is a big concern for the community. I have been receiving concerns about 820 North specifically with the new light going in, and then the new development that's going in just above Hillsdale, and the increased traffic burden, and that is not going to be a through road. Just to give everyone kind of heads up, these are concerns that people are having. I think we spoke with Gordon about different, thinking about elements on 820 North to slow traffic, because I think currently people are already flying around Oakmont, and kind of you can kind of look at your maps. The maps maybe aren't as useful as I anticipated they'd be. At the end, I have a better idea. I think that we can get it recognized around. So I think moving forward, right, Gordon is thinking about 820 and ways that we can really calm traffic. We've talked about raised crossing, crosswalks for the kids there. There's also just concerns on Apple and Cherry intersection and Apple and Locust. It would be great if we could have some really good bulb outs, right? Because bulb outs help slow cars down, especially around where kids are going to be walking. And I do know the Wasatch community is very excited about the new site and saying we want to walk our kids to school. We want to help our kids bike to school. So I feel like we can really help in that effort if we are thinking ahead as this site, as construction's happening, right? So let's kind of think about it. There were some questions of where the school zones would be, and I think, Derek, maybe that's something we can work with our department and district about. And then there are just, this is a problem across the city, but lack of sidewalks in certain areas. Like 1450 on the west side is missing sidewalks. Oakmont, I think the district, right, Derek, will be putting a sidewalk around the back side of Oak. So Oakmont's the north part of the school site, right? We'll also need some some barriers, because Oak Cliff, very steep grade. And I think community's worried because cars have jumped into that field where the school is from Oak Cliff in the past.
Had we not put the Jersey barrier up this winter, we actually would have had a car go off down the nice, lovely steep cliff that we've got now, because one of them did hit that Jersey barrier.
Is Oak Cliff the one that's really steep when you're going up to the Y?
Yeah, good to hit the Y.
That's what I thought.
So, kids will be, because the access point to the school is going to be at the bottom of Oakmont. Kids are going to be walking, around Oakmont to access the school if they're coming from the north, or they're coming from the north and they're coming from the east.
Where's the access?
So, those are kind of the Wasatch concerns. And like I said, people that live on 820 or right those areas, they are very open to creative ideas. I know, cost is always a concern, but can we do bollards? Can we do some strategic low-cost design to even see how it goes, right? And see how it is able to slow traffic around these areas.
So access into the school is going to come.
This is just a picture. This is in Linden. I just wanted to show, these are not I don't think, according to the city planner that I know, these are not really expensive improvements, but when this went in Linden, right, there was a gentleman who came in just expressing concern, like when I go through here, I have to slow down. And that means it was working exactly as it was supposed to.
Yeah.
You know, so stuff like this around these new school sites, I think would be really helpful so we keep our kids safe. Okay, next slide. Okay, shoreline. Before I turn it over to Terry, maybe just to kind of fill us in, if that's okay, Terry. This is a city, something we want to talk to you guys about. So, Derek, will you help me? There's a little like, is it right here? No.
What are you,
We're talking about the footpath, you know, to connect.
Yes, so there is right now currently, you can see the roads that are right here, and it's just open, and there's a gate that it kind of hits right here. So part of the conversation that we had with the neighborhood committees and the chairs is that they would like to have a walking path through this area, either through here, because there's already a walking path and connected up to our property, or have this be improved in some way to where we can have a walking path here. Our stance is, hey, we're willing to open up any kind of walking path. The one thing we don't want to encourage currently is a walking path through an unlit, unimproved area, right, during the winter times, potentially when it's dark and gets, you know, things like that. So we've said, hey, look, we're willing to create it, but for us to be safe and feel comfortable with it, we're going to have to see improvements over in an area where it's just not our control. So.
And obviously, something like a solution like this, though, is helpful, right? It decreases the amount of times kids who are walking interact with cars, right?
Yep.
Decreasing those interactions is really, really helpful.
And if we did create something down here on this 1150 South, it would alleviate the pressure from 1100 and this 890, because any other traffic could either come here or from over here, also here. So it would also, you know, essentially provide a third place that people could access.
That's the parking lot, right?
So right now it's just dirt.
Yeah,
but that is correct.
Yeah, so it's city owned.
Terry, do you mind just kind of filling us in on the communication?
Yeah, there's been Safe Routes 2 meetings so far. Gina went to the first one, and I went to the second one. And one of the main things I think we're not, if you look at the second map, your second map of Shoreline, there is a bike lane on 600 South, west of the freeway. And I'm actually the crossing guard at that intersection, 1100 West and 600 South, and there's actually a lot of people bike in that area, I've noticed. And the only problem is that the bike lane doesn't extend east on 600 South. And it only needs to extend east to 900 West on the north side and to 700 West on the south side. And that needs to happen. And then that intersection, 600 South and 1100 West, is going to be a main intersection once school starts. So either a roundabout, turning lanes, something needs to happen, because right now it's not going to work once that traffic starts happening.
Meaning it's not going to work, meaning it's not going to be safe.
No, not for anybody. And yeah, good luck.
That's right.
And yeah, I'm making sure the bike lanes go south on 1100 West, on the west side, the east side of the school.
Okay,
Yeah.
Which, as I printed these maps off, right, so we can see, but I think if anyone would be up for it, it probably would be in a few months because it's so busy right now. But I would love to lead like a walk at each of these sites for any of us who would want to, so we can just kind of get a lay of what the problem points are, what it would be like to walk or to bike around these new school sites. I think would be informative. I always find that helpful to kind of have a better understanding. So maybe I will say when it comes, maybe in the fall. Is that too far away? Because I think before is too busy.
Well, I think if we're going to move on some things, it probably needs to be before the fall.
Well, I mean,
We got to start moving on some things, so.
So, June? Okay. I will coordinate that and extend an invitation to all of us here, and then whoever would like to join, we could do a couple of different.
Can I just say, when I was campaigning, I did that. I took a bike ride with some people to Shoreline, and it was eye-opening to see what our kids have to go through. My daughter's going to be attending Sunset and would have to go over train tracks and in areas where there's, like Terry was saying, like I wanted to ride her bike, but I also wanted to be alive. So it's eye-opening when you actually either walk or bike. So I think it would be a good thing for everyone to come in and participate in.
Yeah, and I know, like, from first-hand experience, I bike regularly with my kids over to Timpanogos from over on the east side. And when the Third West bike lane was put in, I know UDOT obviously did that, if I'm correct. It's been like a game changer getting, and my 14-year-old can bike over to Dixon on her own with that in place. So it really, has been really helpful to have that. Okay, I think that's all. I have a few little fun things. Oh, I need to that. Oh no, I don't. Sorry. This is from.
This is the non-fun part.
I couldn't help myself.
It's so much fun. Keep going.
The school board, Bike Walk Provo, met with Momi at Timpview, and this was sent to us. And I just wanted to kind of follow up on this since we all received this a couple months ago. I did speak with John Felt, who has been part of this project from Bike Walk this morning, and so the bulleted points are things that they're currently working on from this plan. So this plan is ways in which to increase biking and walking culture at Timpview, which actually will go in conjunction with our next agenda item with the parking issues for next year. So they can kind of be in tandem, right? If we are, it can be helpful to alleviate some of that burden. So everyone has the plan that was shared with at Timpview. So right now I think that the biggest things that are happening is working on the current culture. They have some bike back to school things planned to help encourage kids to bike and walk. And they're address or emphasize Bike Week in September. They are going to work on education and maybe even have some different drop-off points before you get to the school, so you don't have to. And I wasn't clear if drop off and then bike from them or walk from them, so you don't have to you could just be dropped off down the street and then walk into the school. And I'm not clear what those exact drop-off points are, but that's kind of what they're working with the administration at Timpview on. We talked about they covered bike parking, which I think we've gotten some bids on what that would look like, but especially I think like our middle schools and high schools, it would really be great. It wouldn't need to be like 3 walls, but like some covered bike parking would just help encourage people when it's going to rain that their bikes, they don't come out to
And
their
scooter
wet bikes.
parking at Shoreline.
Yeah.
The bikes are getting stolen though too, which is an issue.
Yeah. Even if they're left out.
Like just cut, at Edgemont, I know.
So I wonder if we need to have to get like good ULOS donated to kids, like something. That's good to know though.
Can I ask a question? Like, do you know if Derek, you might know this, if last fall, I know at Timpview, they were waiting on additional bike racks to arrive and be installed because of just increased use, and just trying to figure out do you know if those arrived? Or maybe it was the year before last fall.
I know that right now Kyle's team is going around and putting bike racks in all of our schools, and I did get the answer back. We are covering it out of our budget right now. We've got it. We're spending it. It's between 20 and 30,000, increasing all of the bike racks at all of our schools.
And aren't those kind of like guest bike racks in a sense, right? They're near the front of the school for like if a parent comes up on a bike
Correct.
or an employee rides their bike, as opposed to maybe the student bike.
Correct.
Because you're speaking
space.
to more student bike racks.
But I'm wondering if in the student space, anyway, I'd be interested, I'm sure Kyle's on that.
Yeah.
How many racks do we have anticipating the parking conversation that's coming? I know that last time I was helping Timpview with their bike to school week, we actually postponed it from fall till spring because we didn't have a place for more people to bike, and we didn't want to encourage people to leave bikes unlocked because we didn't have a place to put them.
So this is the first time hearing that Timpview needed student parking for bikes.
It's been a while. That's why I'm saying it may be done. I don't know.
I went up there. I want to say in a construction meeting about probably 4 months ago, and they had a sea of bike
Then they're
racks
ready,
into
yeah.
the front.
Okay, good.
So,
I knew they had ordered them, I just didn't know if they'd come. Great, great.
Which, Derek, biking here today, we probably could use some bike racks here.
Yeah, there's no, I've
Probably
tried,
true. I don't think we have any.
no, we don't.
Lots
No,
of
I
bench.
circled the whole property.
It's that center right there, where you just hook it to the table and.
Derek's office is open for bike parking.
There we go, that too.
Okay.
We can look at that.
I've biked here several times.
Okay.
Any questions on this, or do we want to talk about this more? I was hoping that giving everyone the information seems to think about, keep on mind as we're having this tough discussion. Okay, fun stuff. Okay, this is a covered bike parking in Davis, California. Just an idea, you know, great. Next one, I put this on because this happened this morning for Provo Peaks Elementary. So a bike bus is like a group of parents and kids who have a designated route, and you pick up you have all these pickup spots.
That's cool.
And this happened this morning to Provo Peaks. Chris Wiltsey is leading this effort here, and it was a decent little turnout. It was really fun. Like, you were able to feel in community with a few folks and get to the school. So if you go to the next slide, there is the bike bus this morning, and then that's just let's walk together, and I will put out an invitation and organize us all going together to these school sites so we can just work together to improve safety for our kids in school.
Thank you so much. Any questions for Meg? Okay, that was great, thank you. Leading in to that, the related discussion is a discussion regarding parking at Tempe High School, requested by Board Member Hall, so we'll let her start the discussion.
So yes, we want to encourage as much biking and walking as possible. We thought parking was going to be bad these last 2 years. Next year is going to be even worse. So there's a lot. So Derek's going to bring up some pictures of the current parking that we have and what we'll be losing next year. And then what I want to propose to the city council to help us if possible.
Will the driver's ed parking be opening up?
Yes. Once Pale Valley, once we can get on there.
So what you can see here is this is the start of demolition for next year. So all of this red parking that is currently here for this year will all be gone next year. Okay.
Which is about what,
280 is, I think, is what we've got being used there right now. And so that's all going to be gone. This parking area will not be available also next year. So really, the only parking that we have available is the staff parking lot that we built, and this little one way down here by
the news park.
a news park. Thank you. That was the one name I was thinking of while I tried to pull. So there's been some discussion that we've been having internally about what's the best way to possibly solve this potential parking issue. We met with the community council, had a lot of discussion, had people throwing out ideas. You know, one of the ideas was, hey, can we get the city to allow us to park along the side of the road right here, because right now there's no parking. I think this one's going to be hard just because it's on a hill, right? And there's only one side of the road that's available. So I could see how there could be issues on that one. One of the things that we thought about potentially that I thought was a great idea that came out of the community council was, is it possible that at this junction, in the morning and at night, when school gets out, turn this into a one-way street and just make everyone funnel through this one direction, dropping off and picking up, to just keep a standard churn out. That was one of the things. It potentially could cause an issue with bus parking, or if we did that. We may have to flip it, go the other direction, but that was one of the things. And so what we're potentially seeing is pushing farther out into the neighborhoods the parking than what we currently have right now. We've discussed the potential of a shuttle option where we pick up kind of where, like, have a bike.
And maybe that was kind of the drop-off idea. I wonder, like,
Yeah,
drop off and you could shuttle, or you could
have drop-off zones, you know, up and down Timpview Drive, where, you know, pick up and drop off down near Rock Creek, and same time do it, another one over by, you know,
Canyon Crest.
Bingo, over where the Canyon Crest and that junction is with the church that's right over at the end of that. There's been a lot of discussion. The big question is, you know, what capacity is the city willing to work with us in potentially creating some new avenues for parking, or one way, or opening up that drive, or do we just go down the route of really telling everybody, let's really promote biking for next year?
Well, and I wanted to say that I know that the Timpview administration has done a ton of work out, even counting parking spaces on the streets, counting number of faculty that still need a place to park, figuring out can the faculty park at that church parking lot, and which they're planning to do, and shuttle their faculty over. But the idea of the one way for a certain time is also that you carve out part of that road for the drop-off pickup lane, but it allows through traffic to keep moving. Because otherwise, what happens is, I mean, it's already happening sometimes now, but everybody's just kind of stopping while their kid jumps out, and no one else can keep going when that happens, and then they're darting across. So right now, just south of Timpview, there is a place where they've carved out part of that road with cones, and they have people out there. So when you drive, you can pull up and pull over there, and your kid can jump out, and then there's a corner. It's the corner of, I don't know the street name, North, right?
It's this one right here.
Yeah, and so then it allows, like, there are crossing guards right there, so like I can pull into that side lane, my students can get out of my car, they can walk up to that corner and cross safely. But while I'm pulled over, other people can still keep moving, right? Because they're headed to Centennial or just to work or whatever down that road. So the idea of that would be to allow, because we're going to lose a bunch of on-street parking right there with the next phase of transportation. So it's not just those lots, it's actually a bunch of on-street spots. And they will shift because the new entry of the school, right? People are coming in now to this academic wing, so it's going to shift a lot of people north. So, like, can we safely start to look at where all the people up here are going to be when they start trying to drop off the kids north of the school? Because now people are going to want to be closer to where their kid goes into the classroom.
So I spoke with Principal Tuoa, and she said they would really like to have parking on Quail Valley, even if it's just for this year only. She's really concerned, though, that if we can get a crosswalk here from the seminary up this way, if we are going to allow us to have, for safety of kids coming across. But opening this up just for this next year would be a lot of help to opening up some extra parking.
Is there a street light at that intersection too that would illuminate anyone
There
in
is,
the crosswalk?
there
No,
are,
no, no.
there,
Not like
I
a-
don't think there is right there.
No.
Right.
But there can also, we could put up a temporary one like we do in the morning now if
Okay.
there is.
Yeah.
Anyway, we would really like to have the help from the city council to help us with this.
What is the legality? Like, I see that certain cul-de-sacs have no parking, certain areas have no parking. They don't own those streets.
So the street is owned by the public, the city administers it. So whatever sign we put is to all the public. So if we say no parking, it's to all the public.
No, I mean, like, people are putting up their own signs. I mean,
They're not
So-
valid.
That, okay, so
People
no-
could park there, the
they're
police
not
are
gonna
not
get a
going to
ticket.
enforce it. So those are personal things that they don't.
So if somebody parks in that cul-de-sac right now, they're not gonna enforce that.
It'd be difficult to enforce that. No one has the right to that cul-de-sac. The whole public has the right to that cul-de-sac unless the city signs it. And the way we sign it is for the whole public. If you want a parking permit program, there's a special program to do that. And I don't believe anybody's done that here. So we technically don't bug people, but it happens. But now you've got a rare situation where you're going to have a lot of overflow of traffic. So it might start encroaching, asking some of those questions.
Can I ask why we don't have on-street parking on the north side of Quail Valley when it's on all of the other streets? I'm just curious the history of it.
It's, if we were to put the parking, it would probably take out the bike lane. There's just not enough room for the full parking to have both that, so that's probably
Okay.
the reason. There's probably some temporary measures we could look at, but I'd hate to try to encourage biking and then cover up the bike lane with
Do
parking.
we have a parking and bike lane on Timpview? Is that just a wider street?
Yeah,
That's why
it's
we have,
a
okay,
width
thank you,
issue.
sorry, just curious.
Okay, so, any help we can get there would be greatly appreciated.
Well, send us a consensus on exactly what you guys want, like if you want to cut the.
Well, a
bike
lot
lane,
of it
let us
is, it comes down to what is safe and what are they willing to do for us. I do know that, like, yes, Quail Valley, we would love, the administration, when I talked to Momi yesterday, said if we could use Quail Valley, that would be fantastic.
How many spots would that add?
I don't know.
She knows,
I think
you,
she's done
Monique
it.
counted on,
So,
yeah.
So maybe we'll follow up then with the, with
But we're
the-
losing 280.
Specific
All,
numbers.
she's talked to the, there's a church back here.
Yeah.
And right now she has talked to the stake president of that area, and they are going to allow us to use the parking for faculty only.
Only faculty.
Only faculty, and faculty will be bused over there. If there happens to be a funeral, or if there's a funeral or something that they can't use it, there's one north up here on Timpview Drive that they can go use that on those alternate days. But so we're going to try to get most of the faculty off of the campus, but we're still losing a lot of parking.
I think you should charge for parking too.
Yeah, and that's,
Well,
You can, but the problem is there's like, you also run into equity issues too. Some kids that are coming from different parts of town that have to have a car that may not be able to afford it.
I've
you
purchased a
could do like
parking pass.
discounts for carpooling,
I know it wants a per parking,
No.
but
If they're getting a
Temporary
free
is not
registration,
an issue
should
right
they
now.
have a reduced parking?
Yeah, technically we can't. If they're on that, we would be able to charge them for any fee.
Okay. So
But
maybe.
everybody else could pay the fee.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions for Melanie on this? Okay, great.
Are
Oh,
we
go ahead.
seeing any more kids riding the bus since parking is so hard?
It's about the same.
I mean, yeah, can we incentivize that somehow?
We can definitely try. That was one of the things that we discussed is potentially is there a way to incentivize either biking or taking a shuttle or something? Because at this point it's pretty much going to be every option that is on the table that we can incentivize people to do if we want to reduce the number of cars that are just littered all over the streets.
Right, which I think should be, I mean, I understand the equity issues of paying for parking, but if the reality is we have limited parking spots, that is the reality, right? And so we have to be creative with those limited spots.
Can you prioritize the parking spots for students who live a certain distance away from the school?
I don't see why I couldn't.
There's kids
How
driving
would
that
you
live 3 blocks away.
track that?
Yeah.
They have a map of where kids live and whether
I'm
they're
just saying,
in
and
a.
then you register your license.
have to have that
plate
card.
and someone watches for license
My kid lives
plates.
really far from the school,
Yeah.
right? Because we're down in the south, up to Mazer.
Yeah.
And isn't eligible for the bus.
He rides the bus or he rides his bike. He
Yeah.
does not have a car and will never have to deal with parking here. But occasionally
Yeah.
I have to pick him up. That's what I care about, is when you have to come and pick up your kid from the school, there's got to be a place for you to do that. And where will we do that under this new
And if that's
layout?
if that was kind of the whole point of the one way is that if we did a one way, what
Well,
could
like
allow
picking them up, like to take them to the dentist or something. So not the normal pick-up drop-off
Okay.
time, but when you have to go and
Like a
like
visitor
check them out
parking
of an
space
office and
or
things like that.
most likely what
During the school day might be the bus lane.
exactly that bus lane is really going to be the
I think you change the
default.
policy then, that you don't have to come in and check them out. You can call in.
They have already, I think they've already made that change,
Yeah,
but that's a good thing
I
to
call and I'm
confirm.
like,
Yeah.
he's gotta find me out here on the street somewhere, but that's a really hard thing for people coming to pick up their kids. Especially if you've got a sick little nugget that you gotta get and
Right.
you're worried about them.
Yes, I can understand that. But during the school day, it would be the bus lane is really the only option if you're trying to get off the street. 'Cause
Okay.
There's just not a lot of options, and
That'll
the
be a
area
good
that
thing
there
on
it is right
school
now.
message. They'll need to figure out for sure what they wanna do and message that really well.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's gonna, from the school district, gonna wanna look at the park? Because I like to meet with them and get with whoever, so we can start looking at stuff the city can do versus what you can do, so.
And what we'd like to do is probably let's set up a meeting with Momi, the principal, Troy, our transportation director, and our facilities director to also help with that. And I'm happy to be a part of it too.
So I'll look for invite to some meetings and we'll be all over.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Let's move on to item number 8 on our agenda. We'll be having a discussion now regarding our TIP and RDA strategies, and we'll turn this over to Jennifer Partridge.
Okay, well, I just wanted to talk about this because I know we have different businesses that come to both of our groups to ask for tax increment financing. And I've always just been under the assumption when it comes to the board, like it's already been through the city council, and the city feels that this is important and beneficial to the city. But I realize we've never actually had a conversation about that. And are there strategies that as a city we are doing to determine which projects merit getting that tax increment financing or not? So actually I'm going to ask Shannon if you'll speak to that. I talked to her a little bit yesterday as the chair of the RDA board. So.
Yeah, I am the chair of the RDA board. This is my 4th year serving with the RDA executive committee. And we've not been as strategic as we could be, and I'm hoping we change that in the near future. We've been pretty reactive to developers, and what I hope we do is that we do some analysis internally as a board. This is the RDA board, to be specific about that. Do some analysis, come to some kind of consensus among RDA board members about how we want to move forward, if there's some kind of objective criteria that we could better place to grade or evaluate some of these proposals, and look more long term and say, you know, these areas have blight and merit it maybe more than these areas, or hey, this is a consolidated area we should look at in 3 or 4 years when we have more space for this. So that's something that I'd like to initiate, and I've heard some other folks on the RDA board express similar interest. It's not formally been initiated. When it has been, we would follow up with the Provo City School Board. You act independent of the RDA board, and you can view whatever we adopt or publish, but we wouldn't presume to tell you how to act in those situations. Is that helpful?
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. So I'm just curious if anyone has any more input on strategy or any more questions as we then maybe kind of wait for
I know
some
with
more input
Alpine, school board, they don't approve housing projects. Yeah, I would say that's the majority of districts doing that. Yeah.
And that is largely right, because you're going to be losing money, but also probably having more students that will be in your school. That will be in schools, correct?
Well, on the back end, like residential properties don't pay as much property tax anyway, so yeah, it doesn't work for a lot of districts to support that.
How does that then though impact the city, right? In the sense that the school districts don't.
Well, it depends on who you ask or when you ask them, right? Because it's the developers that come in and would like some kind of incentive, right? And if you ask them, they might say, you know, this isn't really critical, we're just hoping to get a little bit of an incentive. But a lot of them are going to say, this is absolutely critical, my pro forma depends on this. And so we just have to read between the lines and be judicious and make sure that we're honoring the needs comprehensively across the area that the RDA board serves.
And I don't know if you guys know, but the RDA board is the whole council.
Okay.
So there's a committee, the RDA meets
Executive
executive committee with Shannon and Travis and some city administrators or officials. And then, but the whole, as far as decisions, is the whole board, which is the whole council.
So it's, yeah, the RDA board is 7 people, and they operate as a separate entity, but it's the same 7 people that are elected as the city councilors.
So I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm the new person, but can you help just maybe review for me, like, so if a developer comes to the RDA board and is granted what they're asking, does that then come to the school board? Like, just like tell me the process a little. Pretend I'm 3.
Well, I've never interacted with it on the school board side.
So typically what happens is the normal process is somebody will go and initiate one through the county and the city. And once they've worked through the county and the city, then they typically come to us. They can come directly to us, is what we've seen, because most likely the city or the county has said no.
That's part of my question. Like, do we have an assumption when they come to us that they're already approved? Do you know what I mean? They've already tried this process, or are we all independently?
It's all independent.
Looking at this. Okay. All right.
But we can assume if it's the city staff that's bringing it to us, that they've gone through the city
Okay,
first,
so,
right?
Yeah.
And even with approval from the city, that doesn't mandate our
No,
approval,
no.
right? That's what I just want to be
Right.
clear. Sorry that
And
I don't know what I
the
don't know
RDA is
here.
independent of the city too, right? The city
Okay.
can want something, but the RDA board doesn't.
Might not. Okay. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yes.
I'm just learning new things.
And the RDA, like, it's all separate, right? I mean, like, you guys know this because you're a board, but like there's 7 people.
Right.
So it can be 7 different opinions on that too, you know, so.
Yeah.
So it takes 4, obviously, to say yes.
Okay. Thank you.
But I mean, Jennifer and I had a conversation a couple months ago or something, and I was interested in your processes in addressing these kinds of proposals. And yeah, if you have more questions, I mean, certainly your staff can serve you, but there's no mandate for the Provo City School Board to act in alignment with, or to kind of base their endorsement on the RDA's decision.
But we want to be good neighbors, right? So I feel like I like this idea you were saying about having maybe a little more standardized criteria upon which these decisions get made. That also helps inform us, because maybe it's less our area of specialty, right? And so if we understand kind of how and why it merited that opinion from the RDA board, that might also inform us a little. And to me, that's helpful to be a standardized, a little more objective list of how to measure the value or the significance or of need,
Yeah.
maybe, if
I
that
think
makes
it
sense.
would also be helpful, once that strategy's in place, that then there's also more of a long-term look, like if we get something brought before us, that if you guys know, oh, there's something on the horizon
Right.
coming later, or we're anticipating that with the market doing such and such, possibly in 6 months we might expect more or fewer, or
Yeah.
you know, things like that, just to help us gauge.
And that's something I mentioned to Jennifer yesterday, is that if there is a downturn in the market, you can expect a lot more applications, and a lot of people are thinking that that's critical to their performance.
Well, and that helps us with our cap that we have, right?
Right, yeah, because we can only do so much,
Right.
I think it would be important for us to also have, maybe coordinate with and know what they're doing, like what their criteria are, but I feel like we need some, because they come to us, and I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah, is it just whoever thought to ask first, or was charming in the meeting?
Right.
Like, I need
We
I need some
we need
education
to-
so that I
We need to
make
have
a
a
good
parallel
choice.
process,
Yeah.
and we will have a different viewpoint than them, but we need to have a parallel process.
I just wrote that down on my notes. We need to come up with our own set of criteria.
Thank you.
But since
Yeah.
we're independent of the RDA board, obviously,
Yeah.
we're not mandated either way. It's good to have our own set as
Absolutely.
well.
And like Shannon said, our own RDA board needs to do that too, and
Yeah.
get.
Right.
We should do that probably at a work meeting, like a couple of them to develop these.
We're gonna get there.
All right, let's do it. But after after we've done ours, then we can say this is what we've done and.
Yeah, to help.
But that's the moral of the story. Your board does not need to base their decisions on what we're
Right.
doing. You
Right.
act independently.
Right, absolutely. But it could be helpful to us as well.
Oh,
Right.
we need a process.
We
Yeah,
do.
we do.
Well, and the growth of the city and the schools should be a collaborative effort, right? So I appreciate, I mean, from how you're framing it and thinking about it.
Well, and just to, so one of the considerations and one of the pitches that happens from these developers is that we're never going backwards in the tax revenue too. So you don't have a starting point and say, okay, we incentivize this particular project, we're going to take a step back, we're going to get less. It's always, we're just not going to get the gain, right, the growth. And so, you know, for the city, we're oftentimes incented by the fact that this project might not happen without, you know, some kind of property tax incentive. And down the road, looking out 10 or 20 years, it's always net, you know, benefit to us because we'll be collecting more, you know, because that property was improved. So, anyway, that's a lot of times our initial reaction is, yeah, we want more value from this property long term, but the question always becomes, do we need to do it to accomplish that value? So.
And is there, I mean, some of the questions we'll be asking along the way, is there a good, better, best, right? Like, should we be prioritizing a different project that's going to come up in a year or two? Or should we be consolidating? Or should we be worried about a blighted area instead of an affluent area, et cetera?
Thank you.
That was very helpful, thank you. Okay, item number 9. Catrice Mate will address this. We'll have a discussion now regarding property tax increase plans.
We're just curious where you guys are at this year. Obviously, we know what happened last year. And we're just wondering if you guys have a plan going forward. I'll talk for myself, and from what I've heard from the rest of council, we're kind of in a general plan of doing a modest inflation type thing, you know, a yearly discussion on that, and you know, moving ahead probably with that. But that's still up for debate, but that's kind of where we're headed. We're just kind of wondering what your guys' plan is.
So maybe you can address this too, but I know a few years back at one of these joint city council school board meetings, we had kind of introduced the idea of doing an every other year kind of rotation, I guess, with tax increases. And so, since we did one last year, we don't really necessarily have one planned for this coming summer. Technically, it's your turn, but we've never, I mean, there's never been any formal agreement or any, you know, set in place there. But that makes the most sense to us, and what kind of we've always planned on.
We have had, not strong discussions, but we've had some talks amongst ourselves about maybe moving to what you were suggesting, though, that you're thinking of doing a smaller every year. But as far as this year goes, we haven't had that discussion.
Well, and the agreement that was alluded to was prior to, I think,
Most
6
of
of the 7 city councilors.
Right.
Or 7 of the 7
And I
city
think
councilors
6 or
participated.
the 7
Right,
of the
and
board
several of
members.
the
Yeah,
board
so I
members
wouldn't
as
even
well.
call it an agreement.
Right.
Well,
Right,
and
it was like a.
we didn't do it for all of those years either. So
Right. So
there
it's,
were years
I
that we
would,
could've
I would,
didn't.
and personally, I don't hold by that
Right.
agreement.
It's a
Oh,
nice
man.
idea, but nobody actually did it. Well,
Well,
I
and
guess
it's
you guys
hard
all
to,
did.
Maybe,
it's
I don't
also
know,
hard
maybe they
to
thought about it.
enforce, or I don't even know if that's
Yeah.
the right word, when there's nothing in writing, and
Yeah,
it's like
well,
a
you-
handshake
and
agreement,
you
and,
can't.
right, and when boards turn over so often, so.
And the necessity is gonna be different every year, so it just,
It's
it
based
may be
on-
impractical.
Yeah, right.
I do think it's a good idea to get an idea of what each of us are wanting to do, and
Talk to each other.
And,
since
Right,
we
so we
affect
don't
the same
bombard
tax
everyone at
base,
the
we
same
need
time.
to be considerate of that.
and Jennifer and Rebecca are correct. We have had discussions internally of, do we change the strategy in the future to do smaller ones every year based off of a CPI that we would need. So, but this year there absolutely is no plan to do any tax increase. We're holding steady this year.
And I would say it's more important to coordinate when there's the one-off significant bonding that needs to take place. I mean, if you guys want to go to some annual, you know, inflation, we don't need to coordinate that necessarily, but do know that you do get some coverage from us if we're going to do it every year. to have that same conversation. I mean, you wouldn't be acting alone. When we act alone, obviously, in a community like ours, sometimes we take more political heat than if we're saying, look, just the pressures of inflation are creating a situation where we probably all need to prudently look at some small incremental changes year to year to just keep up with those costs.
Most people who came to our city council meeting, truth and taxation, were just mad at you guys, not us.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
They told us, the city said, go your way, though.
Yeah,
We were just happy to have people at our meetings.
Hey, there you go. We're not that
No one even knows who we
interesting,
are.
yeah.
We understand that too.
Some truth to that. I would add that we have a certain cover as a city, because we couch our tax increase in terms of public safety, adding police officers. And that's the lowest bar there is, right, to public safety, so don't know that you have that.
We don't, but we also have some other great reasoning.
Yeah.
State schools
Education.
and education is
Yeah.
also, I think,
Educators.
So we do have, I mean, I think on both sides there's some fabulous reasons, but there's also always some great reasons to be careful and, so.
And to that end, we don't expect near term to have significant bonding over the next year, but there's nothing on the horizon that we're saying we have to do significant bonding and go out for a significant tax increase. Because those would be the things that I think it would make sense to coordinate and make sure that we're not going to the public, even within a year or two of each other, with significant increases.
And Derek, do we have parts of Provo City that are paying to other school districts?
So there is, this is something that's been known since pretty much day one that I've been here.
Okay.
It's an unresolved resolution that we've had for years between us and Alpine. There's about, what I'm hearing is about $100 million worth of value between Provo Canyon and out near Provo High, where it's technically our city property boundaries, but for some reason the canyon and up near Provo High is in Alpine's boundaries. I've already ran the calculation on it this year. The rough estimate was about $300,000 of property tax value that was lost.
So they live in Provo City, so they're
kids go to
impacted
Provo schools.
by, they often do go to Provo
They do?
schools. So they're
Correct.
in
That's
Provo
correct.
City, and do they pay city taxes?
Correct.
But their property tax
No, they pay
portion,
county tax
or
and-
county tax, okay, yeah.
So then the school
But
district
their
tax.
property tax portion that would come to us is going to Alpine School District.
Because and the way theirs is they have the Alpine rate on theirs, I believe. I'd have to go look at the individual property
Oh, wow.
to check, but the way the system is the map has got that area under Alpine School District's boundary and tax rate.
How did that come about
Yeah,
historically?
that would increase our
So-
revenue. What's the process look like, and who's in charge
Yep,
of
yep.
starting that?
These are all great questions, and the reason I know this is because I worked on the one at Jordan prior to coming here, okay? It's a very long process. It took Jordan about 2 years of a very small boundary change of like only 5 homes to negotiate the agreement between the 2 districts, and then it has to go to the governor to sign off on.
Okay. So who starts that
So it's
negotiation?
essentially the districts that we would start it. There's a reason why it hasn't started yet, okay? And our plan has been after December of this year to restart those discussions.
Okay, of 2023. Okay, thank you.
How hard is that
If it was before December, there's virtually no chance of it happening. After December, there might be a better chance of it happening. So.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
All right, our last item. It's been requested to have a discussion regarding teacher retention plans, follow up on a previous discussion we had. We've actually invited Jason Cox to come help us out with that, our HR director, and he's going to give us some updates.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to address this. This is, of course, the core of our work in human resources. We want to be able to attract and retain our employees. I think one of the easiest parts of this to start on is going back to the discussion you just had, the last item. we want to be able to pay people well because we want to be competitive. We want to be able to retain people because we feel like we care about them and we pay them accordingly. So that's top of the list, and Derek has been great with some new ideas and how to address that. And so we actually are currently in a 3-year agreement with our teachers and our classified staff. So some of the other ways that we work on retention is that we have we work on more teacher-driven paid time for grading. So that's something that we're actually working with the association with right now, trying to give them more time just to be able to manage the things that they have to take care of day to day. The other things that we're working on is maternity and paternity leave support. We've had those in place, but they've come out of specific leave banks, for instance, like sick leave. Now we're working on whether or not we build leave separate of that. We also have gone to we're moving to self-insured. So by doing that, we hope to free up money in that process. But not only just freeing up money to have the insurance eventually cost less, have a better provided insurance, just initially by moving into it, we have a larger network for our teachers to access. So one of the other things that the teachers have given us feedback on and has been really positive is providing for them personalized professional development options. They get to choose from a list of many different options that we provide for them. And then one of the more recent ones, and a lot of private businesses work on this, is providing more flexibility to the leave options that teachers have. So if they need to take leave to take care of a sick child, what leave bank does that come from? We want to be really helpful in being able to provide opportunities where they don't have to be worried about that running out. But if that's their concern, they have that flexibility. So those are just a few of the highlighted things.
When you guys analyze where teachers, the why teachers leave or retire or whatever they're doing, how much of it goes to competitor districts, and do you feel like you're in a place now where you're at least competitive with benefits and pay for the competitive districts that are there?
Yeah, that's a great question. So on the reasons for leaving, it's about third on our list, which is compensation, pay to leave for another district locally. With the two closest districts and their size, we are always playing catch up with them, to be honest. We're trying to be more competitive with them all the time. If you look throughout the state at districts that are our size, we are a lot more competitive, but that's not really who we're competing with.
Yeah.
So again, I refer back to Derek's plan. It's been able to make ground on our two neighboring districts, and we have that locked in for 3 years, so we're happy about that we're making headway each of those years. But we would love to be able to, of course, do as much as we can there. We are, again, I think one of the interesting things about being a city district is that our size is an advantage to us. These other two districts that are close to us are very large, and there's times when they don't start with all their teachers in place. We've not experienced that, and knock on wood. We're very lucky that we haven't, and a lot of that is due to our size and the two universities that are here close to us. But again, I think we understand we've got to continue to try to be as competitive as possible.
Does an inflationary adjustment on an annual basis close that gap quickly enough, or does it just kind of keep up with?
It mainly just keeps up, right? Because they do it also. And that's the hard part. So the way school district funding works is you have the property tax base, which only covers about 40% of our overall bucket of money for our operation, right? And the rest comes from state and federal.
Per pupil.
Per pupil.
Same across.
Bingo. And then every district gets the same amount for those funding. And so really the only way to change and get ahead is either through property taxes or restructuring. So,
okay. Thank you.
Right.
Are there any further questions for Jason?
I actually, not for Jason, but Shannon left. Many years ago there was an RDA thing where they provided discounted housing for teachers. Yeah. And I was wondering if there was ever an evaluation of that, and how successful was it, and and if it's possible to implement that again.
Because part of what would help us retain our teachers is if our teachers love Provo and live in Provo and benefit from being in this community. You know, some of the people who've stayed, yeah, and it is expensive to live in Provo, so I feel like if there were a way to do something like that, that might also
Yeah.
help.
And I don't know how long ago the last program was.
Neither do we. We need to get, we would love to be educated on that more, and that's what we'd love. Shannon needs to put on the agenda, and then it can come to us in a work meeting, and we are very interested in looking at that.
And I don't, just offhand, I know there were programs through CBDG, which is a separate funding source that we have.
Yeah.
I don't know that, since I've been on the council, we've talked at all about it being an RDA.
I was told it was through RDA.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's true.
I know other cities have done it. I've heard we've done it like way past.
I know.
So it's something like we need to get more educated on. We should know the answers.
Currently, Alpine has an agreement with American Fork City, and it was through their RDA. So I just assumed it was RDA last time.
And we definitely have a huge interest in housing. That's sometimes called workforce housing for our teachers, for firemen, for policemen. We definitely have some things we're thinking about right now that aren't out there yet. That's an interest that we have. So we also have other assets to go through as far as Provo Housing Authority and the Utah Regional Housing, which are the nonprofit arm of Provo Housing Authority. So that's definitely something on our mind. So
Jason, do you feel like that would help in recruiting, when you're recruiting, if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. There are school districts who've done it recently. One of the school districts actually did a presentation on this at our HR meetings. And what they described was an agreement, a written agreement with the city, a lender, a bank, and then with the district.
So you deed restrict it. So usually in that situation, you do the down payment for them, or you're buying the land for them, and they're making up the difference. So they got that down payment covered, the land covered, which is a significant difference in the payment. So they don't have the right to sell the home, and a second deed is through school. So school would hold the deed, so to speak, where that person just couldn't sell the house. The school would take it over if they were going to sell it, or they get somewhat of their increase to build equity, right? The whole point is to build equity. So they get somewhat of the increase, share some of it with the school, because that initial entitlement has to stay with them. So yeah, it's a thing.
I think the teacher I spoke to at Franklin who has this how she got her house through the last program was they slashed the interest rate in half. So if it's 6 right now, she would be paying 3%.
There used to be some banks that worked very closely with the city and CB. I always say it wrong. Yeah, CBD.
All the letters.
And we had a couple entities, nonprofits that worked within Provo, and so we had those things. And John Curtis got rid of all of those deed restrictions, so that kind of all went away, and the houses all got sold very quickly. It kind of like it ended around there, and we haven't seen it since. So we're looking into. I don't know. We're getting close on our housing stuff, where we're going to really start digging into housing after our budget, which is what we're doing right now. So that is a hot topic.
So who can Terry email to get on board with this?
Like, yeah,
Not
or
me, but Terry.
find out what.
Start with Shannon.
Okay.
For the RDA. And then I think there's down payment assistance through CDBG.
There's some of that now that exists.
Okay.
So
but not specific to teachers, but just assistance for anybody.
Depending on your income,
And that's part of the hard thing is the income qualification to get for that often means that you can't afford to buy a house, right? So the numbers that we're getting from HUD that are used for criteria don't match up with incomes in the market. So we haven't been doing as many of those down payment assistance as we had in the past, just because.
Well, they're 20 or 25,000, and sometimes that doesn't even get close to what a down payment needs to be.
If you're a teacher and you want to work for Provo and you're making less than Nebo or Alpine and your housing is more than Nebo, right? It's just something we have to do something about.
Jason, do we ever advertise anything like that to potential teachers, that they can potentially receive down payment assistance or anything like that?
No, we haven't. Back, actually in the time when Terry was, not recently, I apologize, back when teachers were working with the city on what Terry described, we were doing it more actively, but because it did kind of fall away at a certain point, we went away from having that be a major part of our
You have to have
advertisement.
multiple people working towards it, right? Like they had
Right.
vendors that were lined up, they had nonprofits that were lined up, they had a city that was lined up. So it takes multiple entities.
Okay, any further questions for Jason?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't know, I think it's relevant. Have you seen other districts, when we were at the National School Board Association in Kansas, they do have like childcare linked to their schools. And I mean, I was really, you know, in Kansas it is, you know, it's a conservative place and it's been really successful. And it's something that, you know, faculty and the city, and like so city employees, you know, anyone could use. I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of that. I came back thinking, that'd be great if that could be an incentive for our.
UVU does that, is how it found it very successful.
Okay, yeah. I know this is a program you have to, I mean, it would take years to roll out and figure out, but.
Yeah, some of the larger districts do actually work with us because sites like ours over at Sunrise, where there's preschool existing, they often will add childcare in a site like that because a lot of the expectations for that are required would already exist in that site, so it's not difficult to implement. That's actually something that we just started conversations with our employee group. We're just starting to explore them, so we haven't gone very far, but we are actually having those conversations too.
Oh, that's great, thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for being here today. We did a lot of agenda items in a pretty decent amount of time, so that was great. If there's nothing further, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. I move to adjourn. Okay, I'll take the motion by board member Partridge, and we're adjourned.
Thank you. All right, we'll reach out to you.
Okay.
All right.
We'll look forward to the announcement.
Thank you. Wow, that's a good thing. Been a lot of work.
Read the slide review. When will that be?
Well, I feel like then we start the whole like onboarding transition. Let's make sure that now we stay invested in building this over my life, get to know our community. Next year when makes us